Irrigation here, and today I'm going to show you how to winterize your sprinkler system by blowing out the water out of the tubes. And it's actually a pretty simple process. I thought it was complex, but if you know a little bit about these valves and how your system works, then you can do it yourself very easily. The main thing you're going to need is you're going to need some sort of adapter to be able to hook up an air line to your valve here so you can put the air in through an air compressor. I have 150 psi and 8-gallon air compressor, and it's big enough to work. You don't need a massive one. It's just going to take a little bit longer if you do. Mainly the time is what it takes for it to continually fill up, because you are going to want to fill it up a couple times in between doing each zone, just because it does deplete pretty quickly being a smaller tank. Most of the time you don't want to use more than 60 psi through your valves, because it can damage them if you use more than that, and you don't really need any more psi than that. It's more about the volume of air going through the tubes to push the water out. This is your one-way valve here, and this is the water supply coming from the house. You're going to want to turn off the water supply in your house. You do need to turn that off first, that way you're not pushing more water up through. And then once you turn that off, it stays off for the winter. Again, you don't want any more water coming up through here. This goes to my sprinkler system here, and then these two valves control it. Typically, if they're in line with it, it means they're open, and if they're perpendicular to it, it means that they're closed. So right now this one's closed. When I turn it this way, now it's open, allowing water to flow through. To start, you're going to want to turn this one off and this one open, and you're going to blow out the water that's in your lines. So you're going to use an 11 millimeter nut. That's what mine was anyways. Some of these are different. To take the cap off here, basically what this is there are two valves here. There's a little valve. You can use a little screwdriver to adjust these. Same thing, if the line's going this way, they're open. If it's up and down, then they're closed. You're gonna want to open these both to drain out the water first, because there will be some in here when you first turn off the water of your system. So open these up, let the water flow out. Next thing you're gonna do is you want to close this one and open the top one, because this is the one that you're mainly going to be using to push air through the system. And then inside here, there's a valve that goes up and down. When it's up, it allows the air to come up and the water to come up through your system here. When it's down, the air will actually flow out the top of here. So that's why you need to be able to have this off, so you can pull up on the valve to open the valve manually to let the air flow through, so the air doesn't just swing out the top here. You're going to start with your zone that's furthest away from the house. So I started with my zone 4. You're going to manually open that. I'll show you how to do that here. On your sprinkler controller, you do a manual mode. I do about 5 minutes. That gives me enough time to set it up, and then you're going to turn it off when you're done. So once the valve's open for that zone, you're going to hook up your air, and then the air is basically going to be shooting out here. And while it's shooting out here, you're going to reach in and pull this valve upwards. There's a little float in there. When you pull that valve upward, it allows the air to flow through and push out the air and the water out of your sprinkler system. And then you basically let it run until it stops pushing air through. I leave my compressor on while I do that, just so that it has enough pressure, because again, I have a smaller tank. And then it only takes, depends on the zone. Some of the zones don't take very long. The furthest zone took maybe a minute or two to blow out, and one of the other zones did as well, but the other ones only let water out for like maybe 10, 20 seconds or so. When you do that first initial zone, it pushes almost all the water out of the system. And my irrigation guy, what he told me is that you only really need about 10% of the water out of the ground, but you need about 90% of the water out of this, because if this has a lot of water in it, the pipes aren't very flexible, and there's not a lot of space in here where the water can expand to if it does freeze. With the pipes, they're a little bit flexible, and if you get most of the water out, the water can push around in there and freeze under there, and it's typically not that big of a deal. But you really want to make sure you get the water out of here. So you basically open the first zone, blow out the water, connect your air to this here, blow the air out. Easiest way to get this adapter is just go to your local hardware store. I would say online, but typically it can be hard to find and hard to get the right exact size that you need without physically holding it and seeing it in person. So it is easiest to just go to your hardware store to get these adapters here. And then, so you blow out the first zone, then blow out the next zone, then the next zone, leading up ending closest to where your system starts. And that should get the majority of your water out. And then lastly, what you're going to do is you're going to close this one, open this one here, open both of these, And you should also have another drain down by the valve in your basement. So you're gonna wanna empty that one last, and it'll get the last bit of water that's in here. And leave these open, because if these are closed, the water's not gonna drain out very well. The air can't really escape that way. So you gotta have somewhere for the air to go. If you have any questions, let me know as well in the comments. I know some systems are set up a little bit differently, but most of them are pretty similar to this.